Waiting on people to join. If you have questions, now is the time. While I'm waiting on people to join or potentially ask questions, let me know if this tab or if it goes black. It's public access, so it should be shared. So assuming that the screen did not go black and you can see this image, this is Fudo Myo or Akala. And this is one of the tantric Buddhist deities that's very important in particular in the Tibetan, the Japanese tantric traditions. And one of my teachers used to say, Fudo Myo is mere awareness. Fudo Myo is this quality of the mind resting in an unmoving state while moving through reality. Right? So if you look at Fudo Myo, he has his feet crossed, he's sitting upright, he has a sword in one hand and he has a rope in the other, prepared to tie up anyone who's suffering from delusions and negative emotions and so forth. The sword is to cut through ignorance and attachment and aversion. So if you think about the experiences we've had on retreat so far, you can see that this mental technique of placing the mind on one of the spheres of experience by itself cuts through, as with this sword he's holding in one hand, it cuts through the ordinary process of exaggerating your sense of personal identity, exaggerating the positive qualities of things, and exaggerating the negative qualities of things. So it has this quality of cutting through negative emotion in a very forceful, direct way. You don't have to play around and work with all this stuff and figure out your childhood trauma. And, that if you can generate this mind, it just cuts immediately huge amounts of negative emotion. And then in the other hand, he's holding this lasso, this implement to tie up people who have, it's a bit like putting people in jail. But really what it represents is compassion, that you can probably, all of you who've been with the course up to this point and with the retreat up to this point, if you've had any taste of these minds, you can see how immediately, without too much difficulty, you go, everyone needs this. Everyone needs these incredible, beautiful, blissful minds. How did I not know this was here? How did I not know that if I just uncovered and get all the crap out of the way of my perception, that it was already fucking incredible, pardon my French, right? And so there's this lasso in his right hand to tie up others, but really what that has to do with is to have deep loving kindness and compassion for others. And so you have Fudo. Fudo means immovable, right? Unmoving. So you have Fudo Myo sitting here with this sword that cuts delusions and this lasso prepared to tie up others and help them cut through their delusions also, right? So Fudo Myo represents this immovable quality of mind that is the same one that we're generating. And since we're about to start walking meditation with the visual consciousness open, and you already did walking meditation with the tactile sense open, you have some sense that you can create an unmoving mind, Fudo, right? You can create this completely unmoving, stable mind in the midst of moving activity. So that's why it's Fudo. It's this unmoving quality of concentrated awareness that can then walk through reality, cut your delusions, and act out of compassion and benefit others. So I think having an image like this, for those of you who aren't familiar with all of the imagery associated with Buddhism, you look at something like this and you go, wow, that's pretty horrific looking. Also, he's all black because black and blue in Buddhism represent space. And as we talked about before, one of you had an experience yesterday where you experienced the mind as space-like, where you experienced that completely open quality of mind where it's difficult to tell where sort of, well, in any case, it has this open space-like quality where it doesn't seem to be entirely physical in your direct experience, at least. Except that it cognizes, it knows. So here is, again, Fudo Myo. He's all black in color because he represents this immoving, space-like quality of mind. He has his eyes wide open because he's profoundly aware of what's going on. He's carrying this sword because he's cutting through attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And he's carrying this lasso to help other people with as much force as is necessary to benefit them and bring them to these realizations also. Because that's just naturally what you want to do if you're overflowing with bliss, right? Naturally, you look at others and you go, wow, I wish it wasn't so bad for you. What can I do to help? Okay, so someone said they have bribed their cat with treats, and therefore they'll be able to do some walking meditation with minimal distraction. So when you see wrathful iconography like this, and there's much, 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 much more wrathful iconography in Buddhism, and especially Tantric Buddhism, don't let it freak you out. It's not like demons or something. These represent, in an iconographic way, the perfection of certain types of internal capability. And from a Buddhist standpoint, of course, we say sometimes Buddhas will actually appear in this form to communicate in a really full, personified way these kinds of principles, right? A Buddha is perfectly happy to appear in the most horrific way possible if they can benefit someone else by doing that. They don't care. They don't care. One person here knows one of my primary teachers, who knows one of my primary teachers for internal martial arts. They don't mind at all looking quite scary, but is like one of the softest, most compassionate, unbelievable people that I know, despite the fact that he could quite easily literally kill anyone he wanted to. Okay. So let's return to the practice now. Fudo Myo, immovable mind in the midst of moving activity. Okay? So bring the mind to both feet. Everything below the ankles. Everything below the knees. Everything below the hips. Everything from the pelvis down. Everything from the waist down. Everything from the diaphragm down. Everything from the collarbones down. Add in the left arm. Add the right arm. Add your neck. Add your skull. Bring your awareness to the top of the skull. And then stretch it back down to the fingertips. Without losing those 3 points, stretch it to the feet. Become aware of everything to the front in terms of your tactile body. Everything to the left, everything behind, everything to the right, everything above, everything below. Now, if the eyes are not already open, open the eyes. And let go of the body and just focus on the visual aspect of your experience only. Relax your gaze so that you're not looking at anything in particular. And then stretch your awareness as far as you can to the right. And let go of that. Stretch it as far as you can to the left. Let go of that. Stretch it as far as you can to the top. Let go of that. Stretch it as far as you can to the bottom. Let go of that. Now, before we start walking, we're going to move the eyes while keeping the visual field open. Okay? So focus your eyes forward. Stretch the awareness to both sides so that you're aware of the peripheral, and maintain those 3 points. And then without losing those, stretch the awareness up and down so that you're aware of the uppermost point and the lowermost point without losing the 2 points to the side. Now maintain those 5 points of awareness and move your gaze now, the center of your gaze, to the left. And if you lose the 5 points when you move your gaze, then reestablish the points. Furthest to the left, furthest to the right, furthest up, furthest down. Now return your gaze to the center. Turn your gaze by turning your eyes to the right. And if you lose the 5 points, reestablish them. Return your gaze to the front. Turn your gaze upward. And again, do the 5 points or just maintain the 5 points. Turn your gaze downward. And then allow your gaze to come back to the front. Now, similar, keep your gaze in terms of your skull, keep your gaze to the front, but turn your head, see? So that my gaze is coming with my head. So turn your head now and look to one side and maintain the eyes open. The open visual awareness. Keeping the gaze in the center of the skull, turn the skull, and again to the other side. Return to the front, looking down. To the front, looking up. So having done these little preliminary exercises, hopefully your mind is now primed that simply because you have moved the eyes doesn't mean that the mind is allowed to stop the exercise. So having done that amount of work, just like we did yesterday with walking meditation, only walk as fast as you can maintain the vision. If you lose the vision, then bring the vision back. Okay? And you'll have to divide your attention also, probably 20, 30% in the body or the feet or something so that you don't fall over. And so, once again, because you're dividing attention and there's no way to avoid it now, it's going to be harder to do the visual part. So, go as slow as you need to, and we will do 15 minutes of walking meditation with the focus on the visual field being open. Okay? You can stop at any time and sit down and reestablish it that way, or just simply stop and stand and reestablish it that way. Here we go. Okay. Breathe into the lower belly for a few breaths. Bring all of the awareness into the lower belly. Okay. Whoa. Now, I'm not a scientist, but I don't know how you can do this and look at things and think about all sorts of stuff at the same time you're walking around your room solely with your mind on your visual consciousness. Practice time is for practice, okay? Save your comments, questions, and so forth for after the practice session. Do practice during the practice sessions. Okay. So for those who can't see the chat in the recording later, there's a lot of commentary in the chat from this most recent practice session. Okay, so starting with the first one, they say it looks like I'm looking with my brain or consciousness, and the eyes are just receiving light, as if they're doors and not vision itself. Yeah, exactly. So what you see is actually a type of mental activity. And we've done this in the course before, I think about a year ago before this retreat, where if you go outside, for example, and you look at a little patch of grass on a big field of grass, pretty soon your mind will be filling in the pattern that you're seeing in the middle. It'll just fill it in on the rest of the field because it doesn't know what's there. And so it just fills in, it does its best, And so if you sit there for 2 minutes and you observe one little patch of something complicated, your mind just fills in the rest with what it sort of expects or hopes or thinks or what it's learned from the past might be in that location. But, this is an experiment you can do quite easily on your own. You can do it during lunch if you'd like. And your visual field is mostly just your mind making up stuff. Like you don't actually know most of what's going on in your visual field directly. It's purely a mental projection based on past experience and language and hopes, expectations, fears. So earlier when I was saying, I'm very attached to my tea and coffee, as you've probably noticed. So when you look at something with attachment, your mind adds qualities to it, even in the visual field. So when you have this mental quality of attachment, which doesn't mean feeling close to others, that's the Western psychological meaning. Here, it means that you're exaggerating the positive qualities of some object, and you're literally seeing it as though it had qualities that it doesn't have. And so when you encounter your favorite beautiful chocolate cake or the perfect espresso or, the perfect man or whatever, your mind exaggerates it and it looks like it's glowing and, it's just like bristling and almost wants to, it looks like it's just ready to do something and you have to have it, right? In the same way, when you have aversion, you add negative qualities that the object doesn't possess. And the easiest one, a couple of easy examples of this are when you have a friend who doesn't or who likes music that you don't like, it's almost offensive, right? You go, how could you like that? It's just, right? How did you not notice it was disgusting? And in the same way, I don't know, people that hate cilantro, some people who hate cilantro literally taste cilantro as if it tasted like soap because of the way that they're wired up. But in the same way, people who don't like cilantro go, oh, how could you eat that? It's gross. Or when you break up with somebody and it's a really bad breakup, and then you see someone on the street who has the same hairstyle. Somehow the hairstyle has become bad in and of itself. And you go, oh, that's, God, that's gross, right? So your mind adds negative qualities to your visual experience of the world, and you react to those as if it's coming from the world. So that's aversion in Buddhist psychology, pratika. The other one, attachment, raga, is the exaggeration of positive qualities. So these are the two big poisons, and they're part of what Akala is cutting with his sword. If you can access mere awareness, fundamental awareness, if you can open up the visual sense gate and simply see without adding or subtracting content, then you cut right through a huge amount of your attachment and aversion. You also cut through a significant amount of your ignorance, which is a much more complicated subject in Buddhism that we won't cover. There's a lot of other comments in the chat. So if anyone wants to hop off and head to lunch, you can, but the next session is not until 3, so I'm happy to hang here and answer questions and comments. While walking, the balance is clearly affected. One can only walk very gingerly. Right. So someone's mentioned that the more the concentration intensifies, especially if you're focused intensely on vision, all of a sudden it's almost like you don't know what to do with your body, and you have, So it does take some practice, because you're learning to balance. Let's say we have it's like Wi-Fi. If someone is in the other room streaming Netflix and on their phone and whatever, and then you try to turn on, I don't know, something else in your room that demands a lot of Wi-Fi, it runs out of bandwidth and you end up having a choppy experience. So your mind only has so much energy to devote to things at any one time. So let's say you had 10 units of mental energy. You have to gain experience to be able to take the show on the road, as I sometimes say, to take the show on the road of being able to merely rest in visual experience. You have to be able to devote 8 units of 10 or 7 units of 10. Yeah, I guess if this is our 10, then that would be about here or whatever. So you have to take 10 units of your mental energy and put it into mere awareness of vision. And then you take the other 20 or 30 units and you put it into the body so that you don't look like a zombie, or that you're not stumbling and falling over. And this becomes very important for those who are interested when you start looking at more advanced practices in Buddhism and Tantra and this sort of thing, because the stuff that you're doing internally is extremely complicated and it's going on all day long, all the time. And when you gain more experience, then you're trying to even do it during sleep. So your training never stops. It's 24/7. So that will get better. You just have to learn how to devote X amount. And this is about mental control, being able to control where your mind is and what it's doing at any given time, and knowing where it is and what it's doing. Right now, you don't have the ability to devote 70% to the eyes and 30% to the body and just get on with it. So you're devoting 90 or 95 to the eyes, and then your body's like, Right. So then someone also said introspection, this quality that I call alertness or vigilance, that is aware of what you're doing. So when the conceptuality starts to pull back You can also initially lose some sense of how well you're doing the activity. And then you sort of freak out because you're going, oh, am I doing it right or whatever? And that's called over application. So over application is when your mind reacts to the fact that you're doing it properly when you thought you should be applying antidotes even though things are going well, right? So there's actually two ends of the spectrum. One is you're not aware at all of what your problems are in meditation and your mind runs off and can't do anything. The next is you're aware, but you don't have any of the tools to deal with it. The next is you're aware of what's happening, you know where your mind is going, you know what it's doing, and you have the tools to deal with it. And then the other one, which is over here on the other side, is you get so good at applying antidotes to the problems of meditation that even when there aren't problems there, you still sort of reflexively apply these antidotes even when they're not needed, because you're just sort of in the habit of doing that activity. And that's called over application. So under application is you either don't know the antidotes or you're not aware of what's going on and you're not applying antidotes to the problems that are occurring in the session. And the other side is applying antidotes when they're not needed. So another aspect might be that when you generate, we discussed this in the previous session with regards to the tactile body. Think about what the mental qualities are you're building up on the first 5 stages of calm abiding. Mainly, you're building up mindfulness or remembrance or non-forgetfulness, right? That quality that remembers what you're doing and remembers the instructions. That's the main effort on those first 4 stages, to stop your mind from jumping off the activity. When the mind is actually stable, which happens around the 4th stage of the process, then your mind starts to sink and get sort of dull and hazy. And then you have to refresh the mind and make it bright in the same way that, like if you were driving or you were studying something and then you go, oh, I got to wake up. I've got to be alert, right? When it's late at night or you've been doing it a long time and you sort of try to wake yourself back up. So you have to do things to make the system more alert and awake when it starts to sink, right? But this is a problem for when you actually have stability. So now, what are the main qualities you're building up? You're building up vigilance, which is the ability to detect the quality of the mind, and you're building up remembrance or recollection or mindfulness, right? This quality of remembering what you're doing and remembering the instructions for how to do it. Those are the 2 qualities you're building up. Maybe when you sit down, those qualities are excellent. Maybe they are fantastic. And then as soon as you stand up, the capability level goes down. And then you start walking and the capability level goes down again. You see? So whereas maybe when you're sitting, you have fantastic vigilance and you know what's happening in your session the whole time. But then you stand up and you start missing things. And then you start walking and you start missing a lot of things. Your vigilance goes way down. Now, be honest with yourself. If you can't maintain the vigilance of what's happening in your mind when you're alone in your room, walking back and forth, how in the hell are you going to maintain awareness of your internal state when you're in a meeting at work? Or when you're having a difficult conversation with your romantic partner? Or doing any of the other things that we do in our ordinary day-to-day existence? You're not going to do it. It's not possible. And you're proving to yourself right now that it's not possible by losing your vigilance even when you just try to take a little walk inside your own house, right? So this is why we're training these skills in this way. We're training these skills in this way so that you progressively build up the capability to bring full mindfulness, full vigilance into more and more and more challenging circumstances. Okay, someone said, I'm not using my eyes to experience reality, but consciousness. I'm not looking, I am becoming aware of the view of reality via consciousness through the eyes. I'm not sure I need to add anything to that. Yeah, one aspect of reality, one aspect of what makes you up is the visual experience. And if you can pull back the veils of conceptuality, or some of them, you can't pull them all back, as far as I can manage at least. If you can pull back these conceptual layers that you add on to consciousness that at least are the kind you can pull back, then what you see in visual consciousness doesn't have those exaggerated positive qualities or those exaggerated negative qualities. And so you're seeing more, at least closer to how reality actually is, which is part of why Akala or Fudomyo is carrying this sword, because that state of mind, that unmoving, space-like, remember he's black or dark blue, that space-like unmoving quality of mind has the ability to cut through a lot of the ways that we distort reality. So you are seeing more of reality as it is, literally. This simple practice is, when done right, can directly get you into the non-conceptual mind, it seems to me. Yeah, absolutely. Each one of the sense gate practices is intended to give you direct access to one element of your non-conceptual experience, right? So before you've added a whole lot of conceptual stuff to tactile experience, if you can do full body meditation, if you can open the tactile sense gate, then you're having a non-conceptual direct experience of the body. And because you have pulled the mind back and you're not focused on any individual object in the body, you're also experiencing one of the fundamental minds that you have, which is tactile consciousness. When you open vision, you're having a direct non-conceptual experience, or as non-conceptual as it can be, of vision. And you're experiencing yet another one of the non-conceptual direct elements that make up your being. By the time we get to the end of the day, we will have done all 6 of our consciousnesses, and so you will have a direct experience of each of the 6 major components that make up your being. Someone else said, I found it surprisingly easy and could pace it up to do normal walking pace, except I had to slow down on the turns, especially if I turned in the direction of a mirror. Yeah, this is a good point, because when you see a person or an animal or an insect, our minds are wired up, in particular as human beings, to focus in on those objects. Also, our minds are wired up if something is stationary and something moves in it. Like, just watch your mind, right? If I stand still, where does your eye want to go? It wants to go here, right? If everything else is still and this is moving, your mind wants to go where the moving thing is. So when you turn, all of reality moves. And this is why we did that little exercise where I said, okay, just turn your gaze to the left and keep it open. Turn your gaze to the right and keep it open. Turn your head with the eyes fixed in the skull, turn your head and keep the gaze open. Because you need some practice keeping the gaze open while the eyes are moving and the head is moving. And then, of course, you're going to need even more practice when you encounter people, animals, insects, etc. Also, for a while, don't do this near cars, okay? Don't do this when you're driving. Don't do this when you're crossing the street. Okay, someone said, even sitting back down now, it's like my eyes are stuck with the full visual field very naturally instead of the narrow beam like I've been walking around with my whole life. Also a very important point. As with working with the body, these types of meditation have a residual effect on how it is that you do everything. And because of that residual effect, you're over time naturally, organically going to bring more and more and more and more of your activities into this kind of practice, because you can't help it. It's like breathing. If you stop breathing, it feels weird, you know? Once you start to open the senses, to fully close them and try to focus on something, I mean, you'll still be able to do that, of course, but to completely abandon opening the senses will seem weird. Okay. So it looks like that is it for questions. Let me check the other chat. Nope, nothing there. We will pick it up again at 3 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check. I believe it is 3 p.m. London time. Yes. Yes. Good. So I will see you all then. In between, during the break, do your best to keep the body sense open, keep the visual sense open, and just sort of take your time, take your time, be deliberate, try to notice where your mind is going and how it's moving, what it's doing, so that you can keep the benefits of retreat up to this point in place. And then we can hit the ground running when we get to the evening sessions. If you do distracting stuff, even at this point in retreat, I would say less reading. Less reading is good. You want to try to start to disengage the conceptual mind a little bit more. Take your time when you eat, take your time when you drink. If you have to do household chores or other things, do take your time, and just sort of the general mindfulness advice applies. Okay. All right. I'll see you at 3 o'clock.